Disgraced politicians Anthony Weiner and Elliot Spitzer. A long way to go if they're to win their respective races come November. A new Siena poll out today finds 68% of New York voters find their candidacies to be embarrassing to the state of New York. Weiner also setting a Siena poll record. His unfavorable rating is a record level 80%. And in San Diego, Mayor Bob Filner completing 14 days of intensive behavior therapy after 14 women have accused him of unwanted sexual advances. Filner's attorney says his clients will now begin outpatient treatment. Joining me now, the A-Team, Scottie Hughes, news director for the Tea Party News Network, and Juan Williams, columnist for The Hill, Fox News political analyst. Thank you both for being here. Does it get better than this one? 80% disapproval?
I've never heard numbers like that. I guess that guy really did something wrong, Lou.
and Spitzer is out there still behaving as if he is the arbiter of what is good husbandry. Is that a correct word, husbandry? A good husband.
Well, I'm trying to decide if he's a politician or if he's trying to try out for Hollywood for the next movie, because as you watch this campaign, it looks like the real world New York City edition, because you never know what's going to happen next with these two. They might get elected.
Well, indeed, there are, I'm sure, a lot of particularly local journalists are praying that they do, but obviously most of the voters think that's not such a bright idea. Juan, let's turn to Eric Holder today. On his own initiative and prerogative, the president reducing minimal sentencing, trying to do everything he can through executive action, executive orders, to make it more lenient to have broken our drug laws. Your reaction?
Well, I think it's a smart move. I think this is something where Holder is going to find that conservatives and liberals will join hands, Republicans and Democrats, and he's never had that. I mean, obviously, he's been pilloried, especially by Darrell Issa, House oversight over Fast and Furious and other items. The spying issue has come up, and I think it's hurt him. Here's a moment where I think he's going to get bipartisan support, and it's going to go beyond executive action. I think the president, this part of his remarks, it's interesting, it hasn't been picked up much in the press, but the president is going to pursue this through the fall in terms of real legislative action, and you're going to get people like Rand Paul and Mike Lee, who are Tea Party guys, who say, we agree there are too many people in jail for nonviolent drug-related offenses.
You agree?
Somewhat, to a certain extent, but you have to realize 77% of criminals right now are repeat offenders. So how we're going to sit here and define one crime over another, granted it might be nonviolent, but we need to identify those criminals that have a potential to act again.
Yeah. Well, as we ask at the outset of this broadcast, Juan, how can the Attorney General meet his own metric here? That is, drugs that are not distributed and sold and provided by large-scale organizations, the drug cartels and gangs. They're absolutely insinuated into every aspect of the drug trade. What in the world is the Attorney General thinking by putting that as the condition for leniency?
Well, I think he wants to be clear that this is not about people who are major league drug traffickers, that these are the people who are on the street corner. Well, no, they come from, no, the question is it the kid standing on the street corner? Is it the guy in the restroom at the big law firm? Or is it a guy who is in charge of sending drugs out through a distribution network to people like that? I think that's the distinction.
Do you agree with the distinction?
I think there needs to be a distinction. We need to have lines. And we also need to look at Eric Holder's his motivation in doing this, where he states talking about race. He brings race into this issue. This isn't just talking about the guy in the white suit that's upstairs and that's selling drugs out of the bathroom. He actually brought race in this issue, saying there's too many Hispanics and African Americans in jail, and this was his solution.
And no commensurate call for action on the part of community leaders, activists to address the issue. Right, Juan?
That's exactly right. I mean, to me, that's the outrage. I mean, you'd never hear from Eric Holder or from the civil rights leaders anybody saying, we should have a march against the drug dealers. These guys are destroying our community, destroying our families. This is what we should be doing. You don't hear that, and I think it's the missing part of the puzzle, Lou.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And everyone upset because activists and leaders like Reverend Al Sharpton, Reverend Jesse Jackson not stepping up in the case of that horrible beating by those bullies on that school bus. But think about the millions of lives that have been devastated, and disproportionately the lives of minorities in this country by a failed war on drugs. And these same leaders don't open their mouths on this issue. It's terrible.
It's an outrage, and it goes beyond that. It devastates real estate. You know, you can't live in the neighborhood. Retail business can't operate in the neighborhood. And then people say, hey, how come I can't get a good restaurant in this black community? Hey, wake up. It's because nobody says these drug dealers who are operating some crack house are making it hard for anybody to do any kind of business around here.
Yeah, and to be clear, we're talking about a nation that's being devastated by this.
Yeah, that's true.
This reaches through every economic class, every race, every ethnicity, and it is such a tragedy. And people trying to be cute and cool, saying, "Oh, no war on drugs. We're too sophisticated for that." They're abject fools.
And that's the biggest issue that I think that Rand Paul is going to have to face, because he is a libertarian who believes in the legalization of drugs, all drugs.
Well, I think one other thing that's going to have to be faced by libertarians, Rand Paul and others, is a philosophy that makes sense in this modern age. Simply saying no government is not an answer to anything in this day and age. Scottie and Hughes, thanks so much for being with us. Juan Williams, thank you, sir, as always.